Hello and welcome. I have left Mark alone on the island today with the latest castaway to wash up on our beach, a young private investor called Joe Barry. Joe is an undergraduate at the London School of Economics, and although he is just 20, he manages a small but profitable portfolio and is looking forward to expanding it as part of his strategy for financial security. Mark is a vocal advocate of people starting their investment journey at an early age, so it'll be interesting to hear what Joe has to say about his experiences so far. In this, episode 35 of The Desert Island Investor. This episode of the podcast is generously hosted by Progressive Equity Research. Visit their website at progressive-research.com.
The secret or reason for my success, is, if that is what I can call it, I put down primarily to the fact that I started investing at 18, and due to the powers of compounding, it had enough time to become life-changing for me. I was born into a very modest circumstances, and in terms of career, had decent jobs, but was not what you would call a big hitter. Indeed, I did not have to pursue the demanding, pressurized job, as running parallel to my work life, the passive income from investing played an ever-increasing role. When people ask why we do the Desert Island Investor, I say that it provides me with greater access to businesses, it helps my networking with other investors, and being totally honest, it's good for the ego. Those are all things about me. But there is an element of altruism, and my hope is that we can perhaps reach some younger people who may think that the course of their life is already plotted out and that they're on rail tracks. The retirement age is being put back to 70 in Denmark, and this is a bellwether of what is happening around the world with aging populations and declining birth rates. But I believe that if you start investing early, as I did, you can beat the system and enjoy the fruits of your labours at a much younger age. In many ways, I've surpassed people more intelligent than me and harder working than me. Ever since we started the Desert Island Investor 2.5 years ago, I wanted a guest castaway who was at the start of their journey, like I was all those years ago. And I never quite found the right person. You rarely come into contact with younger investors. Generally, it's older people who have accumulated some wealth over many years, and at AGMs, there's a lot of retirees rather than young people who have taken a day off work. And for many, investing is something of a dry subject. So I've been keeping my powder dry until we've got the ideal guest, and he's here today. It's Joe Barry. So he's an undergraduate at the LSE and a private investor. Welcome to the island, Joe.
Hello, Mark. Thank you very much for inviting me. Yeah, I'm very excited to begin.
Joe and I have got to know one another through your father, who also joined us as a castaway last year himself. And some consume the podcast via downloadable channels, but on YouTube, where the viewing figures are public, David's episode currently has 512 views and 14 likes. So that's the score to beat to ensure you've got the bragging rights, Joe. And we've got sugarcane on the island, and Paul has managed to distill his own rum and has prepared a welcome drink. But despite us being the only two on the island, we do observe our own strict licensing laws. So have you any form of ID?
Yep, got my my driving license if you'd like that.
So that says that you are indeed 20. Okay, that's terrific. Now, a ship must have lost a container, as we've recently had a number of jars of strawberry jam wash ashore. But unfortunately, due to our arthritic hands, we can't get the lids off, Joe. So perhaps your arrival is most welcome. But first,
yeah, I think I can help with that.
yeah, let's talk about investing. And to kick it off, you're at the LSE. The London School of Economics. What career paths are undergraduates they're typically pursuing, please?
Sure. So for those who don't know, the LSE is the London School of Economics. So it's pretty much entirely focused on social sciences. Almost everybody is forced to study economics. Some people love it, some people hate it. But yeah, everybody will study that in one way or another. So I think naturally people are very inclined to go for careers in finance. there's a huge emphasis on that in LSE in terms of our career support and just the general attitude of people deciding on a career. So yeah, I think it's probably 60-70% of people go for finance, whether it's investment banking, private equity. Those are the kind of two very, very much hyped up careers. But others will go into things like audit or tax, with the big four, which is the big four accounting firms, the likes of KPMG, EY, Deloitte, PwC, etc. So yeah, and then you have people who are studying law or psychology, sociology, who go and pursue careers in those fields.
Okay, right. That's quite a broad spectrum. Now you're managing your own portfolio, and at this stage in your life, what are you looking to achieve?
Yeah, so I'm managing a small portfolio. I think at this current point in time, it's just all about learning as much as possible. I've kind of always said that I want to place myself on the steepest learning curve. And I definitely kick about the idea of wanting to do investing full time at some point in my life. So yeah, I just want to learn, hopefully become more financially literate, more clued up with reading accounts and things. And I want to develop some kind of an understanding of different sectors. Yeah, with the end goal, I guess, of specializing in some niche or some strategy. So yeah, I think maybe working in banking or finance will help me to find that niche which I want to pursue.
Yeah, when we've spoken in the past, you said that actually you're not that bothered at this stage about losing money. It's actually the learning process that you're throwing yourself into.
Definitely, I think that's the most important thing at this stage. I'm not too risk averse at this point in my journey. So yeah, just want to learn.
Okay, so alongside what you've been doing, you've had several internships, and if I look at the word intern, the definition, it says confine someone as a prisoner, especially for political or military reasons, and it also says a student or trainee who works sometimes without pay in order to gain work experience or satisfy requirements for a qualification. So, for those who've watched The Pursuit of Happiness about Chris Gardner, played by Will Smith, that was an unpaid role. Can you just tell a little bit more about? I'm presuming it's the second one that you're involved in, not the a prisoner, but yeah. But what kind of how have you managed to secure these internships, and what are the typical duties?
Yeah, so I did a couple of internships running up to first when I was applying for university. So I did an internship with an airport. Actually, I was doing the finances and the accounts for an airport, Teesside International Airport, and then that kind of led me into interning with the Tees Valley Combined Authority as well, which was a more policy focused thing. And then when I got to university, I realized that no matter what kind of career you want to pursue, you have to have work experience, pre-existing work experience to be able to even consider applying for these finance roles and roles which you want. And so everybody was very much focused on getting experience, and this generally took the form of internships. So I think there's two different routes you can gain those internships. One is more from kind of networking in inverted commas, or using your charm to charm your way in, or perhaps cold emailing, creating the opportunity for yourself. So you can either use that method, or you can apply online through the company's website. And I think the second method is way more competitive. Some of these internships have tens of thousands of people applying. I think Goldman Sachs perhaps has even 50,000 people, kids, all applying to those internships. And so I ended up doing a combination of both. I emailed many firms in my first year, perhaps 300, 400 different firms. Ended up getting a couple of offers for internships. And I ended up interning with KPMG over my summer in the first year. And then I kind of leveraged that to do the same thing and apply to many more and email many more people in my second year. And yeah, I ended up getting two internships, which I'll be completing this summer. The first one's with DC Advisory, which is an investment bank. So that will be for 10 weeks. And then the second one is with a private equity house called Aurelius, which will be for 8 weeks.
Right. And so are these voluntary or are these paid roles, Joe?
So majority are paid. Some people like to disclaim in their emails that they're happy to work for nothing, because they think it will give them more chance of getting an internship. And I mean, it hasn't worked out for a few of my mates, but yeah, majority are paid, and they pay quite well actually. I think that's one of the drawing factors. That's one of the biggest reasons why people apply, because the pay is very good, and you can even cover your rent for the year or your tuition for the year just from doing one of these internships. So yeah.
Yeah. And do they let you loose with anything critical?
Yeah, well, I think they tend to work you up. Most of the internships I've done and I'll be doing, they train you for about a week or two, teaching you financial modeling and things like that. And then they start to give you tasks. Yeah, whether it's reading accounts, performing research, origination of deals, um, due diligence, all of that. So they do give you tasks, to be fair, because I think otherwise there's not much point in paying you.
Yeah, yeah. Well, when you were at the airport, they didn't let you loose on air traffic control anyway. Certainly in your first day.
Yeah, it's funny because actually, I got a tour of air traffic control and went up and was shown how to use everything. But yeah, but I wasn't let loose, and they also had a fire department, and sadly they didn't let me drive any of the fire trucks or operate those. But yeah, that's a shame.
Yeah. So what's that? Is that Teesside Airport that I've got to avoid? Is it in future? Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, if you don't want kids running around operating fire trucks and things, you should probably not fly with them.
Okay. So that's a little bit about you. Amongst your LSE peers, what level of active investing is there, and what form does it take?
Yeah, so I think based on my friends, there's quite a large interest in investing. Some are definitely more active than others. I think there's a common goal of sort of wanting to make money, um, whether it's through investing or business or whatever. And there are many, many international students in my university, people who come from other countries to study, and they tend to be from wealthy backgrounds because the fees are much more. And so some of these guys are managing pretty substantial portfolios with funds supplied by their parents, and so they spend a lot of time researching and refining and picking stocks and things. Unfortunately, that doesn't apply to me. But yeah, others invest with much less money. They even invest with mock portfolios, so trading with fake money. And yeah, I think it's really great, the setup I've got, because I can bounce my ideas off with other people.
Okay. And as an interest, mixed in with things like music, drink, sport, traveling, fashion, parties, gaming, and girls. Where does investing rank amongst your peers? How much of is the investing a priority?
I think for most of us, probably second to girls and drink. But
Okay.
no, I'm kidding. But no, I think yeah, as I said, the majority of my friends are motivated by money, and whether it's a good thing or not, I don't know if it's a good thing. But that's partly what's led to us all wanting to break into finance, and consequently we've formed interests around markets and stocks and shares. So yeah, we do talk quite extensively about investing and finance and careers.
Okay. Well, I mean, just me passing a bit of experience for you. What you could do at a party, you could just go up to some young lady and say, "Look, I'm Joe. I'm at the LSE. I'm fascinated by figures, and I think yours is fantastic. You can have that line for nothing. But we've mentioned
Thank
girls.
you.
Yeah. Let me know how you get on. Investing is not a preserve of the male sex. At the LSE, what's the male female ratio, and do you see a similar or differing attitude to investing between the sexes?
Yeah, so I think this very much differs by course in terms of the ratio. I think some courses have a lot more girls than others. My course is management, so it's quite nice and evenly split. I think if you go and look at psychology, there'll be more girls, whereas if you look at accounting and finance, for example, I know that there's a huge, massive overrepresentation of guys. But yeah, I think in terms of the attitudes. Yeah, I think girls definitely do have an interest in investing. I think that many girls in LSE anyway, they contribute to the finance societies and they take roles in terms of organizing finance events and promoting certain things. But I think there's a lot being done to get girls more encouraged as well. There's a lot of diversity programs which are tailored to girls and help them to break into finance. So yeah, I've got a load of female friends who've successfully got into finance as well, and also invest.
So it's perhaps understandable that people at the LSE have an interest in investing. Now, presumably, you've lots of friends beyond this. What do you find is the broader interest in investing within your age range?
Yeah, so I think it depends on many different factors. First of all, it probably depends on which course you're studying. I'd say the majority of my friends are studying economics or finance or accounting, not just in LSE, but in other universities. And so they're naturally inclined to take an interest in investing. Also, probably partly because the careers which they're applying to demand some baseline level of knowledge of markets and things. So it depends on that, but it also depends on perhaps your background. If you come from a wealthier family, you probably have more money to spare to put into stocks and things, or perhaps your family's more financially literate and have made some kind of impression on you, as did my dad. He knows about investing, so he kind of led me into it. But I think there could also be some kind of social expectation now, especially among guys, to know at least something about the stock market or crypto or whatever the latest trend is. And I think it's kind of maybe even a macho thing, if you're asked about your thoughts on the stock market or the prospects, I think most people would like to be able to say at least something. And so it's kind of become a common talking point amongst guys. But then a lot of that interest could also be driven by, just a potential for fast money with trading and Forex and meme coins, all those kind of things. Everybody wants to turn £100 into £1,000, overnight. And I think at that point it kind of turns into gambling. So it depends on what you define as investing, what you define investing as well. But yeah.
Well, that's interesting. It seems like it's more prevalent amongst younger people than what I'd thought. I mean, one thing that you've just touched on there is that people's wanting instant results. It's like attention spans within younger people seem a lot narrower than when I was young. People do seem to want, even like things at the movies. It's got to get going quickly to keep people interested.
Exactly. I think people are getting more and more impatient, and chasing returns, and then they just end up losing money. And I think that if you're genuinely trying to make money quickly, you might even be better off putting your time or your money into a business, or a side venture rather than just chasing trades. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned your father there. Given the path that you've decided to take, now, from my perspective, you've got an excellent resource in your father, David. To what degree do you tap his knowledge?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, very, very substantially. I think I'm extremely lucky to have such a great mentor. My dad's actually never really put any pressure on me to in any direction, in any sense, really. He's never pressured me to pursue a certain career. He's never pressured me to ask him about investing. But yeah, I think naturally I've just taken an interest in it. And I definitely do go to him all the time with ideas and questions and things. I think it's probably going to end up being the same with my brother. My brother's not so interested currently. He doesn't really use my dad as a resource so much, but I think over time he will as well.
Well, I'm quite envious of your relationship there because my son doesn't see me as a mentor. He sees me as a tormentor.
Oh dear.
Yeah, so that's the kind of common theme, I think, more often than not. So have you still early days? Have you settled on a system or strategy yet?
um, Not really. I think I'm still young, and so I'm still trying different things. But I have kind of taken a liking to the idea of investing in small caps. I like how they're under the radar. If you're looking at large companies, you're competing with every fund manager in the world. So there's less competition in the sense with small caps, and some of those companies can be really cheap in my opinion. And yeah, I like the anecdote that fleas fleas jump, elephants don't. So if you're starting off with a smaller amount of money, like myself, and small caps, there's a lot of hidden value there, which you can find. Um, but I think in the long term, you definitely have to decide on having expertise in some kind of sector. something which suits your personality, your risk aversion, your strengths, and it's like impossible to cover everything. So eventually, I want to settle on a strategy. It's just I think it's going to take some time, yeah. But I've tried all kinds of different things. I've tried. At one point, I was trading with CFDs. And that was a total disaster. I've
Could you
tried
just explain
options.
what a CFD is, please, Joe, for our audience?
Yeah, a CFD is kind of similar to an option. It's a contract for difference. It's basically where you bet on a stock moving in a particular direction. So generally, it's done with very high leverage. Um, so so if you're a broke student like me a year ago and you have no money, it might entice you into trading CFDs. But yeah, other than that, I like recovery plays, special situations. I like wind downs as well. So yeah, a lot of different stuff I'm trying.
Yeah, well, I've been winding down for about 5 years now. So besides, I didn't like that word that used bet. And I don't like using the word bet in investing. But anyway, so yeah. Now, besides David, do you collaborate with your researcher? Or do you bounce ideas off other people, or are you acting as a lone wolf?
Yeah, so I think I'd regard myself as probably a big collaborator. That might be partly because I've not settled on a strategy yet, but yeah, I tend to go to my friends and bounce ideas off them. Yeah, I'm a big collaborator, but obviously you should do your own research. I'd never just invest in something because my mate told me to.
Oh, absolutely right. Yeah, you've got to have your own convictions on something. So, what research materials or tools do you use, Joe?
Yeah, so when I'm investing, I like to look at the numbers. I like to look at the accounts, and so I think screeners are a good way of doing that for me. You can just produce a list of companies in seconds. You can put in your criteria. Um, and this wasn't always the case. When my dad was investing, he didn't have screeners. So yeah, I like screeners. Stockopedia have got a good screener. Cap IQ is a expensive one, but luckily with my university, they actually give us access to different finance resources. So we've got the access to the Bloomberg terminal and Cap IQ, so that's really useful. Um, I like reading articles as well. I like some of the stuff on Investors Chronicle is always good. I like Simon Thompson's small cap recommendations. That's good. I watch a lot of podcasts. I like Vox Markets is good for podcasts. PI World. Yeah, I think many
Mention ours
different
for
things.
Pete's sake. Mention ours, Joe. Come
Yeah,
on.
Desert Island Investor, obviously an amazing way to learn about things.
Thank you. Okay. Right. And what level of research do you find you have to take?
um, I'd say pretty extensive. Yeah, I'll never invest in something which I'm not entirely confident with. And I'm not really a very lazy person, so I don't rush with my research. And yeah, I always have a very concentrated portfolio. I don't really ever hold more than about 10 stocks. So I'm kind of the person who likes to put their eggs in one basket, and then look after the basket. So yeah, I tend to take my time.
All right. As again a younger person's perspective, are there any books that you'd recommend?
Yeah, so there's absolutely thousands of good investment books. Well, I don't know if they're good, but there's thousands of investment books which you can read. One which I like is called Free Capital by Guy Thomas. It's called Free Capital: How 12 Private Investors Made Millions in the Stock Market. And it just talks about 12 different private investors. A lot of them, I think all of them are anonymous, apart from Peter Gillenhammer, who's a Swedish investor. Um, but it was very interesting. And I think that what I took away from it is that, there's many different strategies and ways to make money. And all these different private investors were doing something different. So it's just looking at how they've gained success. And there's not really one way to do it. And so you have to kind of decide for yourself um, your own strategy. Yeah, I think another good thing to read is the Berkshire Hathaway chairman statements. Those are free online, fantastic resource. I think it's just full of Warren Buffett's wisdom.
Yeah, it's that phrase, isn't it? There's more than one way to skin a cat, certainly, and that's certainly the case with investing. Now, it's early days on this journey, but what surprises have you encountered?
Yeah, so a big surprise was just the competitiveness of it all. In terms of careers, I think the competitiveness of gaining these finance internships is pretty obscene. So that took some adjusting. I kind of thought that if you're smart, if you go to a good university, you should end up getting a good job, but that's definitely not the case. And I've got friends who are still trying to look for these internships for the summer, quite late now. So yeah, the competitiveness was a huge surprise. Um, I think perhaps also on a more positive note, the LSE community was a pretty big surprise to me. I think I went in thinking that everyone was going to be quite toxic and sort of against each other, but actually everyone's super nice, and I've ended up with a really lovely friend group, and we all help each other to succeed. So yeah, I hope I've not made it too negative.
Yeah, you're determined not to make any enemies, aren't you? I can
Yeah,
tell. Yeah. So,
yeah, yeah.
you're probing, you're probing different and investigating, different areas. Have you worked out who Joe Barry is yet? Where your strengths and weaknesses are, or are you still evaluating it?
I think yes and no. I think I know what my strengths and weaknesses are. I mean, I'm sure there's more which I'm going to find out, but I think I'm good with people. I'm good numerically. I'm a hard worker. Maybe with weaknesses, I'm quite impatient. I overthink things a lot. So I think I know based on strengths and weaknesses, but um, I don't know. I could end up doing something. I could end up pursuing a career entirely different to what I think I'm going to do now. So yeah, I think yes and no.
Yeah. Okay. It's a bit like that one when you go for an interview when people are asking you what's your greatest weakness, isn't it? And mine used to be my intolerance of stupid questions.
Exactly. You don't want to say something which is going to hinder you too.
Right, Joe. So, just looking back, can you remember what your first stock was?
Yeah. So I think when I first got into investing, it was actually because of my dad. And when I completed my GCSEs, I did very well. And so he said to me, Joe, I can either give you some money, just cash, or I can put some money away into investments for you. And so I said, yeah, sure. And I said, yeah, sure. Put it in investments, please. Probably expecting to make loads of money, but I ended up losing a bit of money. So that was technically my first stock. Was probably Camellia or Fulcrum, both of which were disasters. But in terms of actually trading or investing when I'm mature enough, 18, I think I bought Card Factory was my first stock
Okay.
at 18. Yeah.
All right. Well, that's very generous of David, and all I can say, if he ever wants to adopt a 58-year-old man, he knows where to find me. Okay. Right. Well, it comes to the time when every time we've got a castaway join us, we ask them to bring a stock from their portfolio for the treasure chest. It's not a tip. We stress that, but it's just for one just to chew over. So, Joe, what have you come up with?
Yeah, sure. So one stock which I've been buying up recently is called Winstay Group PLC. The ticker is WYN, and they supply agricultural products and services to UK farmers. They have three different divisions. They have feed and grain, fertilizer and seed, and then they also have their own depots, which they supply farm inputs directly to British farmers. And in terms of what I like, I think first of all, it's a simple business model. It's easy to understand. I don't think you should invest in anything which you don't understand. They've had an increasing dividend. They've been paying an increasing dividend for the last 21 years, which is a good sign. They've been making profit for that long, and there's no controlling shareholder, so there could be some takeover potential. And I just think the business looks very cheap. They've got a market cap of 80 million, forward P of 13.6, and they've got a lot of assets. They've got a lot of net cash. Their property, incidentally, are worth more than book value, so their price to book value ratio is probably better than it first seems. And it's a good industry. I like food. Everyone's going to always need to eat food. It's non-cyclical, defensive demand, and they've just had strong, consistent cash flows. So yeah, I like Wednesday Group.
Okay, well, I'll just play devil's advocate on this, because you did give me advance notice of this, and I just had, I don't, it's not a one that I hold, and I just had a quick look at it. But just, I look at the revenue, which is 613.1 million, and the profit before tax was just 7.6 million. So I look at it, if there's any, it's just over 1%. If there's any deterioration, that could disappear pretty quickly. You mentioned, I think, the commodities price had affected the revenue. The revenue was down from 735.9 million. So that's one of the points that perhaps put me off, but you're at the mercy a little bit of commodity prices. You've not got the control. They also mentioned in the report about they've been affected by weather. That's another big thing that you can't control. There's not many businesses that are more affected by the weather than agriculture. And the inheritance tax that's coming into farming, is that going to draw back from people investing in the farm? So those are a little bit of a concern for me. Earnings per share is 12.12 pence, but the dividend is 17.5 pence. So that's not covered. But you mentioned that net cash, which they've got of 32.8 million. And again, so it might not look like it might not look like a great business, but you look at the valuation, the market cap, I think it's about 81 million, and the net assets are 134.8 million. So that looks pretty good, but it's how do you untap, how do you tap those assets? You can be on a discount to your assets for a long period of time. So what do you think about what I've just said?
Yeah, I mean, the discount's definitely been unlocked before. They were sat at 600p not long ago. And I think it's just a case of, if management's successful, if this project is successful, then the discount will be unlocked. They've got a plan in place to increase their profit margins. I think they had some non-recurring expenses, which also harmed the financials a little bit last year. So they're not going to have to deal with that this year. Yeah, so with response to you said about inheritance tax. I mean, you could say that about farming, but you could also say it about AIM stocks. Farms used to be eligible for 100% IHT relief, as did AIM stocks. So yeah, I think people aren't going to stop buying AIM stocks because of that reason.
Well, it's an interesting point you make, because they've been hit in both ways, in a sense, haven't they? Because it is an AIM stock as well, isn't it? So
Yeah.
So in a way, they could have been affected by the inheritance tax on farms, and also the inheritance tax ramifications of what happened in the Reeves budget. So, look, what do you get? What do you get when you put two investors in a room? You get an argument, don't you? That's what generally happens. But let's see what it is. I mean, what's your kind of viewpoint on this? What's your kind of time frame that you're looking for this stock?
For Wednesday, I mean, probably long term. I think maybe at least 2-3 years. I mean, it's the Project Genesis is a 3-year plan, so probably 3 years. I just think that if there's a company that's been paying a dividend for so long and earning a profit for so long, and it looks cheap, then something is going to happen. I think something will happen, whether it be a takeover or people just clock on. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I hope you're right, Joe. So, thanks for that. Thanks for giving us your time in between your studies and your internships and what have you. But
No worries.
I mean, we don't give advice to people, specific investment advice. But again, coming back to the theme of this, which is very much about younger investors. What advice would you give to somebody who's just setting off or thinking of starting off?
Yeah. So I think the first piece of advice I'd give is, you need to try and become somewhat financially literate. You need to become familiar with accounts, and if you can read accounts, that's going to give you an edge. I think if you search up on YouTube or online, recommend me a good stock, you're basically going to be you're gonna find loads of different scams and people trying to sell you courses. But if you search up, how to read accounts, then there'll be loads of knowledge out there, and and tutorials and things, it's not like they can scam you, right? So first of all, I think you need to become comfortable with reading accounts. But then also, I'd probably say just start. It doesn't matter if you start with in a really small way. I just think you need to put your own money up and start investing with whatever you have. Some of my friends would play around with mock portfolios for months and months, and I think that kind of develops bad habits, because you're not really, you're not making decisions as though it actually means anything to you. So whether you've got £50, £10, £100, just put something in and get started, I'd say.
Good advice, mate. Thanks again, Joe, and I hope our audience have enjoyed it. I think I certainly have anyway.
Thank you. No, pleasure to join you. Yeah. Thanks for inviting me.
Well, that's all for this episode. We hope that you enjoyed it. Please remember the content is for information only and it is not financial advice. If you have a question for Mark for our Question in a Bottle podcast, just complete the form on our website, thedesertislandinvestor.co.uk. Thanks again for listening. See you next time.